There's a small village in Punjab where people still refuse to step outside after dark, not because of crime or wild animals, but because of something far more sinister. An old, crumbling mansion sits at the edge of this village, and every night at exactly midnight, something awakens within its walls. The locals will tell you about the red lights that flicker through broken windows and the strange chanting that echoes across empty fields. They'll whisper about footprints that lead into the mansion but never come back out. But most terrifying of all, they'll tell you about the tantric who once lived there and the dark ritual he called Maran Kriya. This isn't just another ghost story. This is a true account of what happened when one young man decided to uncover the truth behind the mansion's curse. What he discovered inside those walls changed him forever, and his final words before losing his sanity still haunt everyone who heard them. Several years ago, this mansion wasn't the ruin it is today. It was home to a tantric who had mastered the most forbidden of all black magic practices. The villagers knew him as a man who could fulfill any desire, grant any wish, solve any problem. But his services came with a price that few understood until it was too late. The tantric practiced something called Maran Kriya, a death ritual so powerful and evil that even other practitioners of black magic feared it. He would make deals with desperate people, promising them everything they wanted. A childless couple would get their baby. A poor farmer would find gold in his fields. A sick person would recover overnight. But in exchange, he demanded something far more valuable than money. He wanted their souls. The ritual itself was performed on Amavasya nights, when the moon disappeared completely from the sky. The tantric would draw strange symbols with blood on the walls of his mansion. He would chant in languages that predated Sanskrit, calling upon entities that existed in the spaces between life and death. The air around the mansion would grow thick and cold, and animals for miles around would fall silent. But the true horror began after the rituals were complete. People who had made deals with the tantric started falling ill with mysterious diseases. Some died in their sleep with no explanation. Others went completely mad, speaking in tongues and claiming they could see demons following them everywhere. The village that had once been peaceful became a place of constant fear and unexplained deaths. The tantric grew more powerful with each soul he collected, but his appearance began to change. Villagers who glimpsed him said his eyes had turned completely black and his shadow seemed to move independently of his body. Children would have nightmares about a dark figure standing at the foot of their beds, and adults would wake up with strange marks on their skin that hadn't been there the night before. Eventually, the villagers had enough. They gathered their courage and marched to the mansion, determined to drive the tantric away or destroy him completely. But when they arrived, they found the building empty. The tantric had vanished, leaving behind only the blood-stained symbols on the walls and an overwhelming sense of evil that seemed to seep from the very stones of the building. Years passed, and the mansion fell into ruin. Vines covered the walls, the roof collapsed in places, and wild animals avoided the area completely. But the evil didn't leave with the tantric. If anything, it seemed to grow stronger. Every night at midnight, that red light would appear in the windows and the chanting would begin again, as if the rituals were continuing without their master.
Most people learn to stay away, but there's always someone who doesn't believe in such things. A young man from a nearby city had heard the stories and dismissed them as village superstition. He was educated, rational, and convinced that there had to be a logical explanation for everything the villagers claimed to have experienced. Armed with a camera and a flashlight, he decided to spend a night in the mansion and document whatever was really happening there. He arrived just before midnight, confident that he would either find nothing at all or discover some perfectly ordinary cause for the strange phenomena. The moment he stepped through the broken doorway, the temperature dropped so suddenly that his breath became visible in the air. His camera battery, which had been fully charged, immediately began draining. But he pressed on, determined to prove that fear and imagination were the only ghosts haunting this place. As the clock struck midnight, everything changed. The door he had entered through slammed shut with such force that dust rained down from the ceiling. Footsteps began echoing from the floor above, slow and deliberate, as if someone was pacing back and forth. The young man called out, thinking perhaps a homeless person had taken shelter in the building, but received no answer. He climbed the creaking stairs, following the sound of the footsteps. In the largest room on the upper floor, he found the blood-stained symbols that Tantric had left behind. But these weren't faded marks from years past. They were glowing with a dim red light, pulsing like a heartbeat. That's when he heard the voice. It spoke in Hindi, clear and unmistakable. Vapas lautna mana hai. No turning back now. The words seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, echoing off the walls and settling into his bones like ice. The young man tried to run, but his legs wouldn't obey him. He stood frozen in place as a shadow began to form in the corner of the room. It wasn't cast by anything visible, but grew darker and more solid with each passing second. Two red points of light appeared where eyes should be, and the shadow began moving towards him. He tried to scream, but no sound came from his throat. The shadow reached out with what might have been an arm, and the moment it touched him, every light in the room went out. His camera fell to the floor, and then his own voice returned to him in a scream so loud and filled with terror that it woke people in the village nearly a mile away. The next morning, villagers found him lying unconscious outside the mansion. But the young man who had entered the building confident and skeptical was gone forever. His hair had turned completely white overnight, and his eyes held a look of absolute terror that never faded. When he finally spoke, it was only to repeat the same phrase over and over. Maran kriya puri ho chuki hai. The death ritual is complete. He was taken to hospitals in the city, examined by doctors and psychiatrists, but no one could explain what had happened to him. He never spoke about what he had seen inside the mansion, never described his encounter with the shadow. He would only repeat those same words as if they were the only truth left in his shattered mind. The villagers tried to destroy the mansion after that incident. They brought gasoline and torches, determined to burn the evil place to the ground. But every time they lit a fire, it would extinguish itself within minutes. The flames would simply die out, as if the building itself was rejecting their attempts to cleanse it. Today the mansion still stands, more ruined than ever, but somehow more menacing too. The red light still appears at midnight, and the chanting still echoes across the fields. But now there's something else. Visitors to the area report hearing the sound of someone crying inside the building, a sound so heartbroken and desperate that it brings tears to the eyes of anyone who hears it. And those footprints the locals mentioned, they're still there in the dust and mud around the mansion. Dozens of them, leading from the road to the front door, but investigators have never found a single footprint leading back out. Everyone who enters seems to stay, becoming part of whatever dark presence continues to inhabit that cursed place. The young man who survived his encounter with the mansion's evil still lives in a psychiatric facility. Sometimes, on nights when the moon is dark, he becomes agitated and starts repeating his phrase with renewed urgency. The staff has learned to keep him sedated on those nights because his terror is so intense that it affects everyone around him. So is this just a story, or is there really something evil lurking in the ruins of that Punjab mansion? The choice is yours to make. But if you ever find yourself driving through rural Punjab late at night and you see an old, crumbling building with a red light flickering in its windows, keep driving. Don't stop, don't investigate, and whatever you do, don't listen to the voice that might call your name from the darkness. Because once the Maran Kriya begins, there's no turning back, and the Tantric's hunger for souls has never been satisfied.
तो दोस्तों, अगर आपको ये टाइम गेट स्टोरीज पसंद आ रही हैं, तो चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करना मत भूलिए, वीडियो को लाइक करिए और कमेंट में बताइए कि आप कौन सी कहानी सुनना चाहते हैं। आपके प्यार से ही मिलती है मुझे ऐसी अमेजिंग स्टोरीज लाने की एनर्जी। तैयार हैं समय की यात्रा के लिए?